Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the MyFootballWriter podcast, whether you're listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube. It is just Will Grant and myself here tonight. Unfortunately, no Frederick and no Henry, but it is Henry's birthday, so we will let him off. So, everyone, please comment down below saying happy birthday to the big dog, Henry Miller. He will appreciate it. But they're not here to talk about all things Norwich City. As I said, it's just us two, and we have obviously that fantastic point against Oxford on Friday night. Obviously, it's been a whole Saturday to digest what was a pretty deflating draw. Before we get into all the rants about that terrible performance, William, how have you been apart from that?
Yeah, mate, I'm good. I'm very good, actually. But I can imagine Henry's absolutely living life right now with a Jubel Peach in hand somewhere in Norwich. So I'm very, very happy for him. And obviously, Freddie will probably be somewhere as well, enjoying life as well. But more importantly, mate, how have you been?
I've been very good, very good. I went to the Sidemen charity match yesterday and saw some proper football. Watching Angry Ginge in that back four really made me think, maybe Shane Duffy's career is coming to an end. Maybe we should sign him instead. He was a rock. And even when he went up front, he was decent as well. But yes, no, I can safely say I'll never see a 9-9 draw again in the rest of my footballing life. But yes, obviously, I forgot to even mention that this podcast is now brought to you by the Fat Cat and Canary, as per our lovely sponsors down there. Freddie did a lovely script about how you can get some drinks and some food. It's a lovely pub, isn't it, William? Let's big up the Fat Cat.
Mate, it's absolutely fine and just the perfect place to go for a match day, really. And that is actually where I'm hoping Henry is right now tonight. But obviously, I don't think he can confirm that. But my fingers are certainly crossed.
Yeah, I mean, or there might have been a lot of people in there Friday night drowning their sorrows. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a loss. It wasn't necessarily a hampering result. It was just kind of a bit of nothing. And I want to earmark this fantastic statistic that I saw online. I'm not sure if it's true. It sounds right. Since the start of last season, we've dropped 56 points from winning positions. Now, if Norwich City were to just score and then the match would end, we might, be up in the Premier League playing against a team like Crystal Palace. But it's very difficult to play Crystal Palace these days, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, back down to the Championship. It's obviously the seventh home draw this season at Carrow Road. Whilst it's an unbeaten match, it's obviously a performance against a team that you on paper think that we should be hammering, basically, given the caliber of the other teams that we've faced and had similar results. Uh, just kind of, generally, what were your thoughts on that pretty drab draw? And really, what are your thoughts on their sort of inability to hold a lead?
Yeah, well, I think firstly, Jack, I think you make a great point. If football was a game of gold and goal, then I think Norwich would definitely be in the automatic promotion places. But obviously, that isn't the case, right? Yeah, look, overall, I thought Norwich probably did enough to win the game. But then again, probably Oxford as well probably could argue that maybe Norwich didn't create enough chances either way. So maybe a point was a fair result, but I think maybe a bit of bias there for myself. Look, I think many players had some decent overall performances. But overall, when you look at it, it felt like another game from Norwich where they were quite tidy in their middle third. They're playing some nice stuff, but it's just very difficult right now. It feels for Norwich to really break down quite a compact block of 4 or 5 in the back line. Really, I think obviously Kellen Fisher showed an absolutely great bit of quality in the first opening minutes of the game. Obviously, it feels like his stock is just continuing to rise right now as well. So absolutely thrilled for Fisher, and I think him and Sargent are definitely getting a good connection in terms of nowhere to be for cross opportunities as such, which is very, very promising. But I think overall, I think there's a lot of players there which I think had quite decent games, but probably did do enough to kind of maybe warrant to be match winners, if that makes sense as well. I think obviously, as you touched on there, Kellen Fisher was great. I also thought Cordoba in possession was quite good as well. But overall, again, it's just those moments in games where obviously I think actually Rout touched on it post game where they try and maybe put more long balls into the box or long throws, even if you will, just to kind of maybe add to raise a little bit. And I think obviously it worked to an extent. I don't know about you, Jack, but I think that goal which we conceded, it felt like it happened in slow motion, and it was just an absolutely horrible one to concede, really. But obviously, I think JHT obviously know that as well. But I think overall, I think looking at the stats as well, Norwich did do enough to win the game, but then again, I think against these teams like Oxford, you should probably be creating more opportunities. I don't think Oxford have a great away record either. So definitely a game which I think Norwich could have won. But then again, as well, if Norwich are to be in the top six race and are to be competitive, then there's just got to be a better volume of chances created because it feels like right now, although we play some nice stuff, we gain control of the game really nicely. It just does feel like at times maybe we are relying on a bit of individual quality from size, speed, two men, or maybe like a long shot from range. I just don't think at times we are creating those high volume of chances, especially away from home, probably in particular. But it just feels like maybe Barnes Stoke Norwich found it quite hard at the minute to try and create a lot of chances in games.
Yeah, and if you look back over the last podcast, I mean, even you called it then with the low block that we were to expect from Oxford. I mean, even 5 minutes in, Pochetta completely gets done by Fisher on the right, creates a chance for Sargent on a plate, and you're thinking, right, we've crapped them early doors. This could be a 6 or a 7 with Pochetta, who's definitely not a left back. And I remember I watched the match and I distinctively looked at the players just after we'd scored and really kind of focused on tempo and really focused on mentality and really kind of focused on what were they going to do next, because this is now, well, at least 2 games in a row where they've scored an opening goal and then just sort of been like, oh, well, that's good. Oh, well, glad we scored. Well, hope they don't concede. And then obviously did. And that kind of long throw, flick on. It's so Route One, and it's so hilarious that Norwich are sort of playing this Barcelona-esque style football where they wish to dominate the ball and completely got done by a Rory Delap-esque goal. And that's the Championship for you, and that's the style of football that we're trying to combat. Obviously, you said about Vicente Reyes getting his first start. Our mate Vicente, if you haven't seen Freddie's interview with Vicente, it's on the channel somewhere, so go and watch that when this is done. But yes, that was obviously as a result of Angus Gunn having a hamstring injury, which I think he sustained during the Blackburn game, but still played on. We heard in this week that Lewis Dobbin has played his last minutes for Norwich this season. Ben Cressene's season has ended as well. Lucien Mapovo wasn't in the squad. Obviously, Kenny and Marcondes were not fit enough to start. I mean, you talk about an injury crisis. What's one step up from a crisis? An emergency? An apocalypse? Is there anything more that can be said about this? And at what point do we start to question, the medical team and kind of the coaching? We've sort of touched on it before, but it seems to only be getting worse. And I think really what the kind of thing that I'm interested to hear from you is whilst fans are very optimistic about next season and they've kind of written off this season, who's to say that this terrible injury record isn't going to continue into next season? What if all of our hopes and dreams, being pinned on next season, are undermined by what is, a terrible injury record?
Mate, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. It just seems to happen every year. I think I said last week, I think I went through like 5 different seasons to date, and I could just literally pick out an injury crisis every season. And I think when you've got such a big sample, and that's what I'm basically asking myself, really, because it feels like there's this so-called 3-year vision when Norwich want to get in the Premier League. But it feels like when you start to add all the factors together, obviously we have absolutely no clue who Norwich want to sign next window, so we don't actually probably have much insight to probably give you all. But one thing which I do definitely probably or like could tell you is that I don't think Norwich will probably keep Sargent and Nunes all together next season. So then again, you're then trying to replace those real key individuals, and then if you add those new players into the team, and you obviously have to get those guys up to the Championship level and intensity, it then puts pressure on the original guys to kind of be the ones to kind of step forward. And then it just feels like we've had so many injuries this year to like new signings. Look at Dobbin and also Eurosec to an extent as well. There's just been many examples this year where we're signing these players from overseas and everywhere like that. I just think there's got to be a stage where you just look at it and just think, well, maybe there's got to be some more digging to go on here, because, I mean, getting promoted or wanting to get promoted in the next 2 years is quite an ambitious statement, in my opinion. I think, although I think it's definitely achievable to an extent, you've got so many teams coming down from the Premier League which have fantastic resources to spend next summer. I mean, you look at the likes of Leicester and Southampton are going to come down, obviously. I won't say the other team, hopefully, of course not. But you then add to the likes of probably Birmingham, Wrexham, who are probably going to spend much money as well. Obviously, they probably won't get promoted to an extent, but you still got the likes of Borough there who probably look to try and challenge as well. I think the way that Norwich should be getting an advantage is having these intricacies of fitness and injury-related issues. You just hope that Norwich are more ahead of the curve, if you will, because for me, I would associate Norwich being quite a forward-thinking club, wanted to try and get ahead of these little small details, and it just feels like, just due to the amount of different profiles from different nations, it just feels like we need to have some factors to actually go our way to an extent. And I definitely do feel with the amount of games which obviously the likes of Salah just played this season, and obviously he felt a bit tired as well. I just think over a 46 game season, you have to try and keep your players fit. You know what I mean? And I think we've seen as well, like the drop off when Sargent Kenny hasn't been available. It's absolutely huge, right, as well. So it's about trying to keep those experienced players fit whilst trying to bring in those new summer signers and obviously those other players who have probably been here now for a few months and years as well to redevelop. And I just worry that I don't know if in the next 2 years, because I feel like getting everyone fit now is just a very big priority. The fitness schedule and the intensity of games is so surreal and kind of crazy to an extent as well. So I just think it's very important, if Norwich are to benefit and try and get ahead of the curve, these small details like availability is so critical. And it feels like every player this season, literally every player this season for Norwich has had like an injury crisis or like some sort of issue to an extent as well. So it's about trying to get ahead of the curve and try to create a squad where they're all kind of got real good availability, but also players as well which can come in and make a real impact. Because although Norwich probably have spent quite a lot of money across these last windows, they'll never ever be the favourites to go up when you've got 3 clubs from the Premier League come back down again as well. So I just think it's very important that Norwich just try and solve that issue, because it has daunted them so much in the last 5 years, and it feels like, especially when Norwich had momentum during the early parts of the season, I think back to the Watford game and stuff like that, all those players are back fit and playing so well, and it just feels like now we just can't catch a break to an extent, and all these young players are having to like learn literally in the present, and I just feel like the likes of Jacob Rottersetch could probably be easing a little bit more. What do you think about it, mate?
I mean, I agree with you. I think with my Will Grant hat on, perhaps lots of injuries to the first team creates a wider pathway for the youth. But I mean, even the youth players that we've tried to input in the team, Gabe Forsyth and Lucien Mahovo, they've had long-term injuries as well. So often, injuries affect everyone, and it doesn't even, benefit the pathway. You talk about sort of fortune of injuries. It is really a question of, it's just poor luck, isn't it? Oh, it's a shame that he's done his hamstring. If it keeps on happening and the same types of injuries keep on happening, there's surely got to be something else bigger going on. And, I'm sure everyone would love to fix that problem of not having all of your players injured. But I was going through in my head who hasn't been injured this season. I don't think Duffy has been injured. He was just late to the game. But I don't think Doyle was injured. But I literally, it really racked my brain, to figure out who hasn't been affected. And I think this is really something that you've got to look at the season as a whole. And when we look back on this season, we'll probably forget the terrible injury record. We'll probably look at it and say, oh, well, Torup's style didn't really work this season. He didn't get his style across. Perhaps you could argue it's a bit of a failure. But I think I saw a stat somewhere that he's fielded 32 different 11s this season. That is not consistency that you can build on. That's constantly having to put duct tape over cracks instead of actually developing something that he wants. He's having to constantly fix based on all the kind of hurdles that he's overcoming. So yeah, pinch of salt, to give him a bit of devil's advocate and benefit of the doubt. The other side of the coin, you mentioned it earlier, was that Gary Rowett came out in his presser and pretty much read how the game was going to go. He pointed out that previously we failed to break down a back five, which is true. So he just decided to do that. And he earmarked that Reyes was making his first ever start, so he was going to throw balls into the box deliberately. We've said this before, and I think especially, I think it was Danny Röhl after the Sheffield Wednesday away match where he basically said he knew how to play against us. You talk about the Torup style, and we're gonna ask the same question: is it becoming too easy to read through us? Are we too easy to stop, so to speak?
Great question. I definitely think when I watch Norwich against the low block, I'm always moaning at the television or actually live in the ground just about the lack of rotations and movement. I think that's a great example, actually, probably towards the end of the game against Oxford. And Norwich are crying out for someone just to literally make an option wide left. And Jakob Sorensen kind of goes there, but then almost kind of gets a bit too scared to go literally wide left because they're so orientated about trying to get control of the game and not trying to get that extra winner. And I think it's very, very... I think there's two sides to it because you want to try and create a structure which the players know and are very familiar with. But there are times, certainly in games, when I just feel like players have got to use their literal IQ to an extent, and they've got to try and use their brains to create overloads literally in those moments of play. And it just feels like, especially during the times when I watch Norwich this season, there just seems to be like a neglection of width at times. And I think, obviously, Jack Stacey isn't probably an example that kind of does that. It's probably more when the likes of Doyle invert and the likes of Fisher invert. But something which I found crazy against Oxford was like seeing Jack Stacey in that like half pocket 10 role like during a bit of the game. And I found that absolutely crazy. And I had no clue what the rationale was there. I'm sure my mate NCT Analysis could probably get it up on his Tuesday article. But anyway, that was very interesting. But I just think at times when you play in a 5-back formation and you have a team which are very, very happy to be in there two blocks of four, either in like a 5-4-1 or a 4-4-2, for example. It's just so easy when it's all in front of them. And I just feel like Norwich do try and play those long balls over the top as well to kind of add some variance to their game. But I just feel like at times they try and be so precise in their build-up, especially in those central areas. They just completely like neglect the width. And it just leaves like players just to kind of get in a very, very condensed shape. And it's just so hard to kind of open that real rigid defensive block up, because there are players which know that there's kind of players and managers which know that Norwich don't like to kind of pretty much stay wide. I think you look at it, the likes of Borges Science, they want to try and cut in. There's no real player that wants to kind of overlap. I think Ben Crossaney probably did it to an extent, but then again, he isn't really an attacking minded fullback. I just think the amount of times this season when I did it, when like I literally just shouted about rotations and movement, it just seems to be non-existent, and it just feels like when you play against Derby, Oxford, like they aren't going to cause too much hassle on your goal, but I think there's real opportunity to try and create these overloads, and I think they definitely do it, but I don't think they do it frequently enough as they could do, really. And I just think that could probably hinder us, because we have got some real good quality in there. And I just think as well, when I saw the team sheet, I saw the midfield dynamic being, I think it was Wright, Simani and Sorensen, and it just felt a bit too flat. Like all those three midfielders kind of do the same thing to an extent as well. And I just think, obviously, missing someone like Nunes is a massive blur as well. But for me, more importantly, it's Marcondes, because he's got that game sense to know when to play the pass at the right time or when to create those overloads in attacking areas as well. So I think he's been a massive blow, especially against those teams who sit deep, because he can actually commit men forward. And I think he's also a set piece threat as well in terms of delivering balls into the box as well. I think we've all seen Nunes corners at least like 10 times this season and literally just pulled her hair out. Bless his heart anyway. But yeah, I just think it's probably like a lack of movement at times. And I just think how it just feels like at times we are so centrally orientated, and it just isn't like enough space to actually play across there. And maybe just kind of being a bit too stuck up in our methods and not trying to be a bit more fluid and expansive as well to really try and break down the team. And I also feel as well, I think we tried to recruit that maybe one-on-one specialists as well against those low block sides, like the likes of Kate Gordon, obviously Dobbin to an extent as well. But it just feels like we had a player pretty much who can not only beat his man but also deliver quality as well. I think Odell has bing pretty decent at beating his man, but again, for like the 6 year running, it's about trying to get that they just cross into the box, and again, it just hasn't been there. I just feel like Norwich in the summer, we need that one-on-one specialist out wide to cause more problems, really. And I just hope it does come, because I think it adds a real big difference against those teams who sit deep, because the likes of QPR, Oxford, Derby, they're happy to come to Canaries for a point. They know how good we can be if we give them space, and they ain't going to give it. So they just play so centrally orientated, and they just try and just keep in those two blocks of four. And it's just very frustrating to kind of watch, because it just feels like Norwich could be a bit more dynamic and try and utilise the flanks more often.
I think, yeah, you called it with teams like Derby, Preston especially, and Oxford especially. They came with the game plan to get a chance, take that chance, which most teams, if they get one chance, usually take it, and hold what they have. Oxford did not want to win this match. They wanted to simply contain us, and I think they only mustered in total 2 shots on target. And again, it's one where back five is impossible for anyone to break down. Um,
But
but
like, yeah,
you've got to be more creative. You've got to be more dynamic than that. Like you mentioned earlier, take a shot from distance. Utilize your set pieces instead of letting an in-swinging corner go out for a goal kick on 2 occasions. Nick Stanley, love you to bits. I would like you to explain the rationale behind that corner, because the 2 corners, because none of them made sense. What were you going to say, Will?
Yeah, but also again, I would argue Preston's biggest strength is their defensive kind of core. Their midfielders and centre halves, they are so disciplined. And even against Oxford, I think Brannigan wins man of the match for just his defensive behaviour and discipline as well. Like, there's no secret. It feels like those defensive sides who sit deep and can show good discipline and just keep in their position, they'll have great success against Norwich because they know that we want to kind of look for those half spaces in those central areas, and they just know, especially I think Preston have like across the year, they've played in like this like box of four midfielders, and it's just so hard to break down. And what Norwich do, they try and play centrally, and I'd argue that Preston game was probably the most fastest it's been all season at Carrow Road. It's just there are some games we just think,
Yeah, and I think we've said it before that what this team sort of lacks in terms of the championship is just players with a bit of grit. Obviously, a lot of people said that if you had Shane Duffy in that defence, then he probably would have headed that long throw in a way. Obviously, that's quite academic and with hindsight, everything might be possible. But I looked at Oxford with the likes of Brannigan. I think it was Moore in defence. I think Brown was the other. I think they all got yellow cards and they all, shrugged it off like it was part of the game plan because that was what they were going to do was grab people by the scruff of the neck, stop chances, and grind out for a point. And I think Oxford will leave Carrow Road with their heads held high. Another point for them in the race to stay up. And they'll be very proud. But it's again really frustrating. You mentioned there about the midfield creativity. Completely agree that having essentially three defensive midfielders leaves you with pretty much no creation in the middle of the park whatsoever. Said it before that we really rate Fisher. It's had a great season. Doyle's obviously had a great season. Cordoba has been fantastic in recent games. At the back and then up front, we've got the championship's top goal scorer, the best striker in the championship, and possibly one of the best young forwards in the championship in Ante Cernat. So you've got quite a good defense and a very good attack. It is just connecting the two. And you made a good point. I'll allow you to elaborate on it slightly. Emi Marcondes, within that kind of midfield, is he the answer? And potentially, is the answer maybe a change in shape from the kind of traditional sort of three in midfield to going back to our traditional Farker-esque two defensive midfield and a number 10? Someone like a Marcondes in that 10 or a Schwartau.
a really, really good point on Schwartel, actually, because I'd actually argue that Schwartel's best performances this year have come against those sides who have probably come to Carrow Road and probably have been the favourites to win the game. I think back to the Watford game, at home. I thought he was absolutely fantastic that day as well. And I think there was also another game as well at home recently where also he was very, very good as well. And I've just been very, very baffled about why he hasn't been chosen in those games against sides probably do sit deep, because I think he adds a real new dynamic to our midfield. I think he gives you that real drive and industry to create those overloads. And I've been very, very surprised that we haven't seen him play frequently in that midfield three. Obviously, the people that watch this will probably know that I'm not the biggest admirer of Slimani, and I just think during those games when you are playing against teams who sit deep, I think the biggest quality you need is probably technical ability, and it feels like Slimani's probably got more physical qualities in terms of his strength, his ball carrying, and I think that's probably more efficient against those games on the road against the likes of Bristol City coming up, for example. But in those games where there probably isn't much space to operate in and work, the likes of Marcondes, Desai, Schwartel, they're probably your kind of players to really influence those kind of games, really. And I've been very, very surprised that Schwartel didn't play. But then again, I think Torek kind of sees him more as a longer term project. But I think definitely ready to impact stuff now, because we're seeing it also feels like as well. We're seeing a lot of teams also when they sit deep, they also win quite a lot of their duels as well. And that just leads to Norwich kind of like losing the ball a bit too easily and a bit too frequently, and that might lead to us going long on a few occasions as well. So I definitely do believe that Marcondes probably has been our best midfielder this season. And I think he adds such value to the team. I just think he's got an absolutely fantastic, almost footballing brain and IQ, because he's so, as I said earlier, he's so strong at winning those kind of duels and getting past players and creating those overloads in those attacking areas. And I think his quality also is fantastic. I think his first touch against Blackburn was that fantastic ball into the box for Cernat. So he's just marinating his quality with real intelligence. And I think when you've got a player similar to what Zimbo was like under the Fark years, when you've got a player who kind of represents the manager's kind of philosophy in a very clear manner, I think that always helps a lot. And I think Marcondes is definitely Tark's kind of version of that, especially. And I just think he gives the team so much qualities, and also Marcondes as well, absolutely fantastic out of possession as well. And I just do generally think if he was maybe had more football under his belt across pre-season and also last season, then I definitely do think he probably would have started more games. And I do think, obviously, we'll touch on this later, but I think when we see the likes of McLean and Marcondes come back, I do see Norwich putting in more better performances as well, because I think we just look a bit more solid, a bit more robust, and a bit more kind of able to change the flow of the game much better.
Yeah, and I think the dream midfield three is McLean, Nunez, and Marcondes, and I'm struggling to think how many times. I think I saw somewhere that it's only happened 2 or 3 times this season. Again, indicative of exactly what we were talking about earlier, and the kind of reshuffling of the team constantly. Here's a fun little fact for you. I think I stole this from NCFC numbers. Love you. 77.2% possession, which is the highest in our recorded history against Oxford. Means nothing. I think if any of you stat nerds want to say, oh, but we dominated the ball, I'd much rather have that statistic of, goals scored being quite high. But I agree that Slimani had a questionable performance. I don't know if he's fully fit or not, but it felt quite kind of wasteful at times and quite laboured. But again, I think we've got the match coming up on Tuesday against Sheffield Wednesday on a Tuesday. And it'll be on Sky Sports Plus. So
yeah, and that is your favourite streaming service, right, Jack?
Well, however you want to watch your football is entirely up to you.
No fire sticks, right?
No, we don't condone any illegal behaviour at all, and neither does the Fat Cat and Canary.
Yes, that's a yellow card, 100% for me there.
Yes, well, someone who had a very good game against Oxford, obviously created the goal for the best American in the world, was Kellen Fisher with a brilliant, like I said, cross to beat Poeta. He's quicker than Poeta. I love to see that. It was generally really solid throughout this game, and has been pretty solid ever since he swapped with Jack Stacey. You mentioned this sort of pre-pod. Is there sort of a feeling that he's maybe one that's under the radar as one that Premier League teams will be having a look at over the summer? Is he one that we might have a bit of a bidding war on our hands?
I think 100%. But also not just Premier League teams as well. I'm thinking more top 5 leagues abroad as well, because he's got such great technical qualities for a player of his age. I think it, personally for me, when you watch the game tactically and you're seeing a player literally operate in like 5 different roles, but like each game or during games, I think it shows absolutely fantastic maturity for a player of his age as well. And especially in the last few games as well, I would probably say from that whole assist onwards, I think when he delivered that ball in for Silent, I think it was Fisher, wasn't it? I've been much more enhanced final third kind of player from him as well. I think he's become much more accurate with his final ball and his deliveries into the box. I think that's been absolutely fantastic. And he's just such a very, very good footballer in possession. He provides so much passing quality, his combinations for the teams, obviously, really getting involved in those rotations as well. And I just think he adds, for a player of his age, I'd probably argue Fisher probably does the most rotations for Norwich. And the fact that he does it so perfectly and so astute, I think it's absolutely huge credit to him, really. And I think, especially in this modern game, I think technical quality is very, very important. Obviously, it feels like now the modern game is probably more emerging towards more physically dominant players. But I think when you've got such a technically proficient fullback who also can hold his own, can also hold his own defensively as well, winning a lot of slide tackles and also tracking his man with some decent recovery plays as well. I think that's also very important. I just think his play has been absolutely fantastic. I don't think Norwich probably lose him to an extent because I feel like Norwich could probably see him as a player which they could probably develop for about £20 million. I probably don't see Norwich. I probably don't see a team come in for him for that much money yet. But definitely a player which Norwich got in their hands where they could be a bit wary about maybe some interest in the summer, 100%, because he's got so much quality. I think we've seen some soft links about him going to the Premier League. Obviously, it doesn't feel like anything is concrete as of yet. But when you've got a player who can play in multiple positions and also fits in with a modern day way of playing in terms of multiple rotations from right back then, I think you've got a very, very good player on your hands. And I think Norwich could be in with a bit of a surprise by the volume of interest this summer. What do you think, mate?
Well, you mentioned the soft link. I remember there was an article that came out on Twitter or something about, I can't remember who it was that had bid for him or was apparently reported to sign him for £3 million.
Was that Newcastle? I think I saw. I
think so. Yeah, 3 million. So that's like, one of his boots.
That's very sus for me, I think.
Yeah, no, I think, if you're a fullback who is, both very good, clearly by the statistics, defensively, if you're adding assists to your game, if you're, full of pace, I think, again, for a player like him, I think it's just kind of, improving those defensive stats, maybe being a bit, strong. He is strong in the tackle, but obviously, you can always be a bit stronger. And I think, I think what we always say about the move up to the Premier League is the physicality of it. Not to say the Championship isn't physical, but I think there'll be a lot of hipster scouts that will kind of see him as sort of a very promising player that's gone under the radar. I probably wouldn't say, team of the season right back. There's probably been better right backs in the Championship.
I think he's up there for sure. I really do. I think especially, sorry to cut you off, mate, but I just think from that probably Watford game to now, I think he's probably been in some fantastic form. And I think he's probably up there. I think you probably look at the likes of maybe Trey Hume from Sunderland, maybe he's probably up there as well. But I think he's got a real shout, especially obviously Basher Humphreys as well. But I think he's got a really, really good shout personally. I just think since that Watford game, I don't think he's put a foot wrong. And I think definitely for me, if I was voted for play of the season tomorrow, I think he'd be in my top three.
I was literally going to say that. He's definitely within that top three. I think Borja, had he kept up his goal scoring, would have been a shoe-in. I think you're now looking at Sarge maybe overtaking him. You're then looking at, could a Callum Doyle sneak in there or a Kenny McLean? But, I think it would be, if he won the Barry Butler, I don't think it would be that much of a shock or that much of a surprise. That's probably how... that's how good a season he's had. Obviously, mentioned the Sheffield Wednesday game midweek, and then we've got another game midweek, Bristol City away. How do you view these next two? I think the general consensus from the fan base is that it's that playoff race is looking long. It's looking a bit too far from us. But 6 points in the next week, could that really, change the picture for the rest of the season?
I think it could. I don't think we'll probably break into the playoffs, but I certainly won't go as far to say that like it's over. I do see why fans will probably be sceptical about it, just due to our inability to kind of be in control of games in terms of holding on to leads. I definitely do see that for sure, but I think the games against Sheffield Wednesday, I know they're quite a good win against Plymouth, but I do think they do have a bit of a crisis right now in terms of injuries in defence. I think they've only got one fit and a half, but I could be wrong come when they play Norwich. And I think that game against Bristol City is going to be very, very tough. But I think with the game against Bristol City, I think obviously without being a bit rude and disrespectful almost, they are a side which you probably don't have the utmost faith, which they could probably retain their place in the playoffs. So I'm probably going into both of those games with a bit of hope. But I think overall, which is a really annoying thing for me, mate, is that when Norwich play well and we play to such a good level, and it looks like at times we're like a automatic promotion contender, and we play some great stuff. We've got such a high ceiling, and there's players playing so well at a very, very good intensity. But the problem is with Norwich, when you show some really, really good signs in build-up play and also generally as well, and when you can see quite a soft goal, it just kind of it just ends up in a bit of a issue because it feels like, especially this year, the league has almost transpired between quite attacking oriented teams last year, going up in the likes of Southampton. Obviously, they're down the road, but this year it just feels like if you've got good foundations and you've got players within your team who are match winners, I think obviously Norwich do have that, but I just don't think they have the defensive nous and security and grit to really get through quite a tight game. And I think that's probably what's going to make us a bit short. But I think overall, the way we played this season has been very, very encouraging. I don't think playoffs are off to an extent, but it's going to be very, very difficult against some sides who probably have a bit more experience and a bit more nous than what we do, really. And although I probably wanted to come into this podcast actually and say that generally this season I've been very, very happy with how we played, what I am getting very worried about is our game model seems to be so orientated around the word control and wants to try and be the dictators in game. And to an extent, we are being that. We're creating some good chances, but if we wanted to create some control, why are we right at the top for the amount of goals conceded in terms of conceding leads? I think that is such a very, very annoying stat, and I think if that maybe continues in 18 months' time, that could be a very, very big downfall for JHG, and I'm just kind of worried because it feels like this season I don't know if we've seen enough learning from him about going through those games as such. But obviously, maybe I think the sample size is still a bit too small, and obviously this season isn't one where Norwich expect to go up. But next season the standards will be much higher, and rightly so. But I just do worry about whether we can be a side who really do get our game model to come across and create chances, but equally as well show some good defensive nous and good defensive security to really grind out those results. Obviously, experience is kind of like a big buzzword at times, and maybe rightly so to an extent, but Norwich has still got to go there and show that they can withstand pressure, because right now I'd probably go into next year, although I go into next year happy with how the team have played, and then maybe on a good day and a good season we can go up. But I just worry about how teams can just pick us apart too easily by the simplest of chances. But I do understand that the likes of JHT has struggled with injuries and obviously suspensions as well. And obviously this year has been quite a big learning curve for him to an extent. But I do just worry if we do continue to sign the same players and kind of still going for like quite a young age bracket, that maybe experience might continue to be still a problem, and maybe it could be maybe a few more years till we do become quite a very, very good reliant top side team, especially with our injury record. So overall, sorry to go on a little bit on a tangent, but I just wanted to get across to maybe all you guys as well that I think overall I'm quite happy with how the season has gone, but I just do have a worry that if we do continue to sign these players who are so young and from all these different leagues, whether they still have the ability as a group to really try and kind of conserve leads to an extent, really, because I think it's very, very important at this level, because the amount of games which I think teams like Sheffield United have won, for example, where they played quite poorly but still won, that is such an important trait in this league. And I just worry whether Norwich will ever have that in this regime.
So what you're saying is we should sign Danny Bart and Adam Forshaw and Ashley Barnes back. Maybe we can get them back on loan. I'm sure they've still got their houses in Norfolk, so they can't have moved that quickly.
Well, they were. Well, I think most of them were there for Kitman Pete's birthday party, and I think that was due to. I think that was during Kenny McLean's absence, wasn't it, as well? So he looks in good nick. Hopefully, he can continue his fine energy and performance levels in the games to come, mate.
Yeah, he was there. Apparently, it's a respiratory condition that he's been suffering with, whatever that means. But it was very good to see him come on against Oxford. Hopefully, him and Marcondes and Gunn and Grant Holt and Darren Huckabee are all up to match fitness. And why don't we just put Kevin Keelan in goal and have an absolute Norwich dream team? Right, so we've done some fantastic analysis.
No, Jack, you always get away with it. I want to know how you think Norwich are going to get on in the next two games. Please say that. Please say that the players are still on. Give us some hope.
Well, okay, we'll put quickfire hot takes on pause for the moment. It's on ice.
Mate, all I'm saying is you always get other people, but now it's your time to actually rise above and go bold, like Abu Kamara play of the season shout.
Yeah, Abu Kamara. Yeah, and no one saw that transfer strop happening. I stand by it. It should have happened. Look, they're two teams that have inferior squads to us. That's not me. That's not controversial. I've rattled through it. We've got the best striker in the championship. We've got the top scorer in the championship. We've got Shane Duffy with loads of Premier League experience. Callum Doyle on loan from Manchester City, one of the best young right backs in the championship. Marcelino Nunez, a Chilean international midfielder. Kenny McLean, who's won the championship twice with Norwich.
I get your point. Okay, sorry about that.
The squad's good. And I think, this is like a comment, to all the kind of Norwich fans that are complacent with mid-tableness, is that if you look at that, we've got a very good selection of players. And obviously, one of the best promising young coaches, in the country. There isn't a reason why we should just be like, that's a tricky one. Carrow Road against Sheffield Wednesday, tricky because they've been decent under Danny Roll. But again, depends how they set up. If they want to nick a goal from a corner and then put 7 players in the box, they'll do it. I think Bristol City away is always a tricky one. That's the derby between the people who talk like yokels. We're the better yokels, though. East is better than West. East side, yeah. Well, I think if we finish this week with 4 extra points, I think we can say that that's a success. But So what is our record now? I think it's 1-12, drawn 13, lost 11.
I think we get 1 point. Sorry.
1 point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it'd be quite a bleak game at Carrow Road against Wednesday. I just think, obviously saying that, I just think Danny Roll's quite a good tactician, and I think the same principle of them sitting in quite a deep shape at times, but also possessing the front of the counter attack. I can see them scoring quite a poor goal, and I think Bristol City this year have also been very, very good at home as well. So, probably I'll go for 1 point.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Well, how many points do you think we're going to get? Put your comments down below. Obviously, you might be watching this after both games. If you are, then just tell us how many points we got. This will be in the future, so I don't care. Right, we're going to put quickfire hot takes out of the ice bucket, and we're going to put it right front and centre. So it's just us two. It's not going to be quite as long or interesting as we'd planned, but we've still got some spicy opinions. So first one, classic one, your anti-man of the match against Oxford.
Oh, goodness me. What? Oh, I think Somani, man. I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm too harsh on him, but I just think he was a wrong profile of player against that opposition.
Yeah, I was thinking Slimani. I think, like I said, I think he had some poor touches. I think Stacey just kind of he didn't really suit the match, and I think the plan must have been to have Doyle at left back with Duffy in the defence, but obviously with him being late, that feels like a bit of a kind of last minute change. I'm going to go Stacey just because, yeah, he didn't really excite me that much. Would you rather have our all-time best ever back four with our worst ever goalkeeper, or the other way around? Like our worst back four ever and our best goalkeeper, whoever you deem in each position.
I think defence win you titles, mate. That's my motto, and that is what all the big guns say in the game, mate. So I'm going to put my pro hat head on. That was quite a tongue twister. Go for that. What do you think?
I'd like all-time goalkeeper and all-time defence.
Well, we all.
Well, yeah. Who would you say is our best all-time goalkeeper? For appearances, probably Kevin Keelan. For international pedigree and success for the club, probably Tim Krul. Maybe. I mean, he won a penalty shootout at a World Cup. Okay, before he was with us. But yeah. And then who would our best back four be? Oh Lord.
Basically, what Jack's trying to say is any four defenders which actually remain fit, probably could do the job for Norwich.
Yeah, Malcolm Mackay's got to be in there.
Maybe, but what I will say, actually, I think there's actually a spell where I thought Callum Doyle was doing honestly so well. He's giving us ball progression, like reliability and winning tackles. Like I generally thought he was probably one of our best defenders, probably the last maybe 5 years to an extent. I thought he was that impressive at times. So, but look, I think if you think about it, we'll be here all night personally, mate. But but I think there's quite a few. I just think defensively, really, we've kind of been a bit so bleak in a sense that we kind of go so yo-yo that it feels like 1 year some player we absolutely mint, and then the next year they'll be a bit poor. So
I'm going to say the opposite to you, to be controversial. I do agree that probably the defense being rock solid is probably better because there's four of them, and there's more likely to be top performers within that. But again, it's kind of this season that the players that have played in each position, that they're up there with the players of the season, and Gunny statistically has been well short in terms of his performances. But yeah, I mean a back four of like Andre Wisdom, Jos Højveld, Carlos Cuellar, and Stephen Whittaker at left back.
That is so harsh on Ignati Miguel, by the way. I think we're going to mate, move on. Just move on after that. You can't leave out Miguel, mate. That's a red card offence, mate.
To be fair, I deserve that. Love you, Ignati. If you're listening from Girona or wherever you're playing right now. What is the worst Norwich City attacking set piece that you can remember? Now, this is obviously this is as a result of the terrible corners that went straight out of play.
Wow. The thing is, when I think of poor Norwich set piece, I just think of Gilmore's corners and them just not literally getting past the first man or literally right at someone's literally he played absolutely fantastic pass from the corner flag to the bloody front man. And it happened every blooming time. And that probably explains why we weren't a very good attacking threat in that Premier League season. Oh, there must be one out there, mate. Give me a hand.
I mean, you said about Gilmore. That's why he's now playing in Serie A for Napoli. But
Honestly,
there's always one there has been loads, but there's always one that sticks in my mind. I remember Kyle Lafferty away at Wigan had a free kick from 25, 30 yards out, and I think it went out for a throw in. I think he tripped as he took the ball. But Kyle Lafferty, what a man!
See, that seems about as woke as when I think Gary Neville put Harry Kane on corners. Why was Lafferty on a set piece?
Oh my god! Surely he must have scored like a free kick once during his Rangers career. What I also remember is signing Kenny McLean from Aberdeen, and he was on penalties for Aberdeen, and he, we were assured that we were getting an expert penalty taker. Has he ever scored a penalty for Norwich? I think even in the shootout against Tottenham in that FA Cup game, I think he even missed that penalty.
Yeah. I think he did. I want to say, was there a penalty he scored in like 1890, like away at Bolton or something like that? I could be wrong, like Rotherham. I have no clue.
No, because I think he missed that one. I think in 1819, I think we had like 4 or 5 different penalty takers all miss penalties. But I'll have to look back on that. If you can all tell us how many penalty misses there were in 1819.
There was loads, wasn't there? Now you think about it, Christ, yeah.
Ranchich, Rhodes, Pookie, yeah. Still won the league. What is your favourite Norwich City goalkeeping kit?
Definitely not this season's one, I'll tell you that for sure.
Oh, really?
No, mate, nah. Very unpopular, but I just think it looks quite. I don't know. It just looks like it's been like programmed on Scratch. You know that like that thing you use in like primary school, like this like software service. Anyway, I think that's more for the younger listeners. Anyway, but strangely, I really like that orange one. I think it was probably 1819. I think like that light orangey one. But I also did like the I think it's the same season when I think Krul wear that like turquoisey, but like more like green shady black one. It's really hard to describe, but he was kind of, it was 1819, and I think it was like, I think he wore it against, when he had that shocker against West Brom at home.
Yeah.
It was like mainly green, but like shade, but I think like shades of black on the arms. I think that's what I'm going for, mate.
Yeah, I just mostly remember there was like was it grey that season? Yeah.
I thought it was more like that greeny orangey one, like that green and orangey one. Yeah.
Yeah, that was there. I mean, I when I wrote this, I was looking back over some of the classic goalkeeping kits. Obviously, the one from like 92, 94, like the Brian Gunn one of like the little sort of purple squares, the nice retro baggy one. That one's quite iconic. But I rediscovered one. Now, this is quite niche from, I think it was the 17-18 season when we first had Gunny on loan, and it was a dark green kit with like yellow sort of Adidas-esque stripes across here. You might not remember it because I think he only must have worn it like.
I think I do actually. I think I think I do, and I'm not a huge fan of that. I can't lie, mate.
I mostly just liked the stripes across the chest. I've always thought that we need to do. Is it the Asics shirt that we had in the 80s with the kind of stripes across the front? I think we need to bring that style back.
I tell you what is quite woke though about goalie kits. Like, I think I see now like the amount of times I see goalies wearing like their club's like third kit as their actual goalie kit for a game. I think Aaron Ramsdale wore like that like yellowy kit they had like in I think it was like 2 years ago, and Ramsdale was literally wearing the like third kit or like away kit. It was really crazy, but I just think stuff like that. Like, are you that type that you have to have like the same kit as your away kit, like you're Arsenal? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think you can buy whatever you want, but I'm a grown adult. and I would never buy a goalkeeping shirt. Sure, if your child would like one, absolutely fine. But that's just my opinion. Last question. It's not Norwich related at all. I was just inspired because of your dinner. What is the best part of a roast dinner?
Oh, really good question. I think it depends if you include pigs and blankets actually in your roast dinner, but I think that's more Christmassy, so I won't. Do you know what? I'm just an absolute avid lover of Yorkshire pudding.
Ooh.
I just solid. They're about £1 in a supermarket, and I could just scran like a few on my roast dinner on a Sunday, like every Sunday. And I just
Yeah.
think like they are just the simple things in life which just make you happy every week. Do you want to? I'll give you a good comparison, mate. It's just like in that 17-18 season when Angus Gunn just every week 8 out of 10, no problem. Just simple, effective, and a very very good bit of kit.
There you go. There you go. Well, yeah, Yorkshires, I think if you make them from scratch, they're delightful. But even controversially, the frozen Aunt Bessie ones are still just as good. Um, I would argue that.
Or even
I
Tesco own brand for the cheap people or cheap listeners, including myself.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure Fat Cat and Canary do or Yorkshire puddings, or maybe they do.
Yeah,
Uh,
I honestly like. I think some like pubs like do these like absolutely massive ones, don't they? Like you know what I mean? Like they're like
mm,
absolute towers. And
yeah,
also, I think you can get like massive like obviously Yorkshire puddings, and literally just have like a whole roast actually in it, like roast potatoes, peas, a bit of meat. There's a great place in Wroxham actually, but I can't remember the name where they literally do like a massive Yorkshire pudding, and they literally just put like a roast like actually like a roast in it. It is absolutely phenomenal. If you guys are ever in Wroxham during the off season, just go in. I think it's called Old Crumbs, and
there
it is
you go.
absolutely fantastic.
Old Crumbs, if you'd like to be sponsor number 2 of the My Football Writer podcast, please do get in touch. Will Grant and his crew at Wroxham will duly welcome free Yorkshire puddings. Um,
Honestly, like I would just describe that as just prime 18-19 Buendia, or even lockdown Buendia. That's all I'm going to say.
Lockdown Wendia. Oh, we will never see the likes again. Maybe we should do just an entire podcast ranting about how that season was stolen from us, the scenes and the limbs that we could have had. But again, we're right at the end of this podcast, so we can't do another one. Maybe in the summer when we've got nothing to talk about. But just to quickly answer your question, it's either the Yorkshire puddings, the roast potatoes, or the gravy. I think you've got to have the gravy. You've got to put all that together. Got to mix it up, and that's a bit like this podcast. We've lots of different elements, but we've covered them all in nice, warm, podcasty gravy. So if you've enjoyed this podcast, please do subscribe for more nonsense, not necessarily roast dinner related. We will be back next week to analyse both of the games against Sheffield Wednesday and Bristol City. Whether we'll get 6 points, 1 point, or no points, we'll still have lots of stuff to talk about. It's goodbye from us, and we'll see you very soon.